I'd like to present a recent work that we've been doing based on a study. But before we start, I'd like to invite you for a few minutes to sit. You will not have to disclose anything, and nothing will be shown from the outside, but it may help us later to understand or discuss whatever we will try to do. So those of you who are willing, I'd like you just to sit comfortably in your chair and maybe change something in the position of your seat. And if you can, put your 2 feet on the floor and use the chair to lean back and להתרווח a little bit, take space. Spread out. Okay, spread out. Thank you very much. I will need it when I continue. And those of you who are comfortable enough, I invite you to just close your eyes for a minute or two, or maybe 3, and pay attention to your breathing. You don't have to change anything. You don't have to do anything. Just pay attention to the way the air comes into your body from your nose and then comes out again. Just paying attention. You don't have to do anything. And whenever your mind is distracted or thinking about something else, go back and focus on your breathing. And let the air goes in through your nose and come out again. And be aware of any sensations that comes up. You don't have to do anything or to change anything. Just be aware. And when you feel free with paying attention, try to imagine how the air, when it comes in, widens your chest. So actually the air is doing or helping to create some very small movement in your chest of widening and contracting. Of widening and contracting. And if you can imagine this little movement, try to imagine that this little movement may lead to a bigger one, of widening something in your body and contracting again. I will now ask you just to pay attention of the way your feet touch the floor. Again, you don't have to do or change anything, but imagine. And if you can imagine this, try to put some power to your feet and press against the floor. You may feel some energy coming up or not, but be aware of the sensation that this may evolve from. And when you're ready, open your eyes And try not to focus yet. Just open your eyes. And when you're ready, do something to stretch whatever you can, like maybe. Breathe in, stretch your hands, stretch your back, and we'll start whatever we are doing here. So I'd like to present the movement assessment manual for trauma survivors that was developed after, as a result of a study that was done together with Rachel Chelev and Galit Zana. And I will not give too much introduction as to what is dance movement therapy, because thank you, Sabina, you've done it so well for us. But I'd like to concentrate on the results of the study that led to building a protocol of intervention, and then we can maybe discuss this protocol. But we try to build a protocol as from the results, and I'll show you some slides that will illustrate what we've done. So the main objectives are increase awareness of bodily expression that release emotional and physical tension that lead to reconnection between body, movement, and verbal expression. This was it uses motion, emotion, and verbal expression like we know that we use in dance movement therapy. So this is not something very new. But the new thing is that we try to provide a technique of intervention with trauma survivors. So we have a traumatic event that leads to emotional arousal, that leads to physical responses, and I'm not sure because maybe some physical responses also lead to emotional arousal. So what I was doing here to regulate my emotion before starting the lecture, so I decided to go into another state of regulation, of calming myself and maybe you. But actually, I really used you to regulate my emotions. So thank you, but excuse me, but this is what was done. I may go back to any definition of trauma because I believe we all sitting here know some definition of trauma and PTSD, and I'd like to go directly to the results of the study. So what we found is that traumatic stories, I mean, when we tell a traumatic story, usually or always, I believe, it is accompanied by movement that describe or augment the traumatic story, the traumatic event that is being said. So we found that traumatic stories are longer in time and richer in details than non-traumatic stories. We also found that traumatic stories show more movement expression, twice the number than non-traumatic stories, which in itself, I believe this is interesting. So about the movement categories that we later use in the protocol, in the manual, we found that illustrative movements of actions, of emotion, and movement that replaces words were significant in traumatic stories more than in non-traumatic stories, and rhythmic movements of unspecified gestures of hands or head were also important. And then we come back to the regulative movement that I started with, which include repetition of movement and comforting movement and even cessation of movement. When I say repetition, so we all understand and we have a common knowledge of what it means. when somebody repeats what is being said, or when we say comforting movement, we see movement of people who touch their chest or their body or their hands. So these are comforting movement. And cessation of movement, we all know that when we freeze, when we stop moving, then it goes actually back to the actual event when people use fight, flight, freeze, or even faint reaction. And I don't know if you Israelis remember the boy who was in Migdal who saw the husband killing his wife, and the boy of the neighbors was there by accident. I mean, he was playing with the children at home. He fainted. This was his reaction. So these are the results, some of the main results of the study, which led to building a protocol of intervention. Now, I'd like to, okay, so what is dance movement therapy? I think we spoke about it, but we see it as a modality of psychotherapy that uses body movement and verbalization as an intervention, a tool for self-expression, and it combines movement and music and words and body awareness. This is much like the brush. I mean, the body in dance movement therapy is much like the brush in art movement therapy, in art therapy, or the guitar or any other instrument in music therapy. And about drama, I'm not sure. So drama, the body is also a great part. In bibliotherapy, they use writing, reading, they use their pen. So we use our body for assessment and intervention. And the therapist observes and responds verbally and through his body. So these are very basic things. And I'd like to go to the manual, because this is maybe something that we can later discuss. So it was developed for trauma survivors, but it is adequate for those who suffer from distress and anxiety. And we divided it to 4 main phases of intervention, and I recall Uri's, what you said yesterday, that we have to, use research for any of these interventions, which is a complex thing, but when we say dance movement therapy, it's very a complex thing. It's an intervention of relation, intervention of many psychiatric, developmental, and other disorders. So I'll try to describe what we are doing, and then we can discuss whatever is needed. So we start, like in most interventions in dance movement therapy, with a warm-up, which is physical and emotional, to create a supportive atmosphere, to create a safe place, to create being at home with the body, but also with the place of therapy, with the room that we are meeting. Practically, it means activating body parts, really to do a warm-up of muscles and of not wrist, but all the joints, and be aware of body sensation, like what? Okay, be aware of body sensation, be aware of space around us, and establish a relationship, because we know that therapy is a relationship. This is the first step to get awareness of patterns like flow, weight, time, and space, which are basic concepts that we received from Laban and are being used in therapy. So the second step will be training a place to relax. And the place to relax is a place to go, to return to whenever the situation gets too difficult, whenever the arousal that was carried on from the trauma event is being unbearable. So we train people to relax. We can use techniques like breathing, grounding, body awareness, and many other techniques, all of those that help the person feel at home with his own body and with the space around him. Attentive movement, and not authentic movement, I mean. And we can discuss the term here with Helen and with others who, but being attentive to what happens to my movement, to how I move, with whom I move, and is a little different from authentic movement, I think. And imagination helps produce a relaxed atmosphere. So if I can't move, I can still imagine a movement that is going on inside my body and is being sensed in my body, but also that I can communicate with it. And children do it automatically. They can imagine that they play with a friend, that they are running, that they are jumping, even when they can't. But being able to imagine is the first step. The third phase is search for inner resources. And this is to gain control over and self-confidence and empowerment over any situation. I'm very curious what you're saying. But I will hear you later if you agree. So this may be achieved through physical grounding, through strong movements, exploring different movement possibilities. And I saw it in one of the cases that I treated, a girl who was unwilling to go home. She was a soldier and she was hospitalized in a daycare unit, and she stopped eating, she vomited, and everybody thought she was anorexic. And I wasn't sure. And the head of the department said, Dita, you go and see her, but don't talk to her. You're in dance movement therapist, don't talk to her. So I said, all right, and I did what I did. And we started moving very slowly, and she would go like this. And after a while, it wasn't very fast, but after a while, I asked her if she can put some more power and energy in her legs. And make her movement a little bit bigger. And she said, yes, of course I can. And she did like this. She was frail. So I asked her again, and we did it together, and we practiced it. And all of a sudden, she would go like this. And she said, wow, but I won't be able to hit his face. And then she burst into tears, and I'm excited now, and we sat down very quietly, and she told me the story of her being abused by her brother and his friends at home. They closed the door, parents were at home, and nobody knew. The mother didn't know, the father didn't know, and this was the reason that she didn't want to go home. So what we practiced is looking for any empowerment in her body to help her cope with whatever feelings that arose in this situation. And this is a long search. And I think we worked for a while. But physical grounding and being able to take power from the ground may help you, or may help us, maybe me too, gain some control over the situation. So this was the third phase. The fourth phase aims to integrate body expression, sensation of arousal, and bodily resources. This is accomplished by going back to the event of the trauma, trying to remember it, trying to recall it, and then maybe imagine at first to put a different ending to it. So when we put a different ending to it, eventually we can live with it in a better way. So re-experience the movement in a new space, in a new relationship, may help a different ending to occur. Now, new movement help regulate and rebalance the trapped emotional response that was used in the original traumatic event. Now, remember when we started with breathing and relaxation and attentiveness of our feet on the floor, and if you can recall, we spoke about illustrative movements, about regulative movement, and about rhythmic movement that we found in the study that were main movement that accompany speech when we spoke of a traumatic event. And I want to show you some very short clips. I had the honor of interviewing a woman, an old woman in Japan, and she was a little girl when the bomb fell on Hiroshima, and she agreed to be interviewed. And when I saw her, okay, you'll look at it, and okay, and I saw her, and she was holding a piece of paper with two hands, very strong, like this. And she said she was 11 when the bomb fell, and she was alone. And after a while, her aunt found her and brought her to her mother. And I thought, wow, this is terrible. But she did not disclose any emotions. The only thing she told a little bit later in the conversation was that her mother became ill. And about the illness of the mother, she could talk. She was okay. I mean, of course she was okay. But her mother was ill. And now let's look at what she said, at what she... Okay, it's enough. So she spoke about her mother, that she was ill and she had cancer here, and they had to remove everything out. So this was illustrative. This was illustrative to the trauma that she felt, and she expressed it through the illness of her mother. And because speaking of herself was probably too much. I mentioned regulative movements. So this is one of the participants of the research speaking without words. And she was trying to regulate her own emotion and to calm the interviewer. Okay. Okay. So what do you say about this? Do you want to comment, anybody? Galit, do you want to say something? Self-touch of the hands. Okay, self-regulation, self-touch of the hand, and moving back and forth. Moving back and forth, as if L is to relax himself. Okay, עוד אחד. The boundaries of a chair is very, very interesting because we use the boundaries of a chair as a safe place to relax in. It gives us confidence. We don't move out of the chair. Like if I would have asked you, please move out of your chair and come into a circle, some of you wouldn't like it so much. And this is okay. I mean, this is really okay. But at this first stage, we use a chair as a safe place. Then we use a room as a safe place. Okay, okay, okay. And look at this. So what are these? Illustrative movements? Can you imagine what she's saying? Is she empowered? Illustrative movement of action, yes? Aggression? She was angry. She was angry. She will show the world what she is, what she can, what they've done to her. Okay. Oh, this is a question. Is it culturally or not culturally? Yes, Israeli talks with their hands. Italians maybe also, I know. But we compared people who spoke about a trauma and we also let them speak of any situation non-traumatic. And we found out the use of illustrative movements were more, twice the number, when they spoke about the traumatic event than when they spoke about a non-traumatic event. So the situation of culture, which is very interesting, yeah. And this is the last. So you see her face, her mouth. זה מטורף. Okay. Okay, I think pictures are more important and say more than any word, and I thank you very much.